Anyways, hello, welcome, I'm Lee, the user reviewer, and welcome to another review roundup. Not quite as gargantuan as that last one I did, but I feel like I heard enough from the past few months that it warranted another one of these. Before we get started, I'm going to leave 2 links in the description down below, along with links to my socials and whatnot. The first one's going to be a link to the Stay Hydrated 2020 playlist. This is where I regularly update it with my favourite songs of the year so far, so if that sounds like your sort of thing, then I would give it a shot, my personal opinion. The second one's going to be a link to a poll, or poll, whatever it's called, which is where you can leave your recommendations or suggestions for what I should cover in the next review roundup in a few months' time. I can't say I'll get around to everything, but anything that you leave on there or down in the comments below, I'm definitely going to prioritise. With that out of the way, let's get into reviewing 40 albums in 49 minutes. I get the feeling that no matter how much you dislike Gerry Cinamon, it's got nothing under the disdain that other Scottish folk like myself have for him. The Bonny isn't as bad as Erratic Cinematic, but it's no less agonising. The abuse of reverb on this record, I think it's broken like an unwritten agreement of the Geneva Convention. Instrumentally, it's just more of the same, unremarkable folk pop and just autopilot chimings. You know, it could be a canter if you were just a wee bit less of a wanker. I'm getting a headache thinking about that line. Bare minimum stuff that will still sell out Scottish venues, so at this point I'm just talking into the void. But yeah, this is 41 minutes of my life that I'm never getting back. And if this video is 41 minutes long, you can't use that on me. I'm serious. So when I originally reviewed this on Rate Your Music, I said that it sounded like if ARTV made a Green Day album on Guitar Hero World Tour, which honestly I can't top that. I might as well just end my whole career right now, but I'll make it an attempt of talking about it. But I don't want to beat a dead horse either. This is the worst thing that Green Day have ever put out, and a lot of the shortcomings are similar to the ones I had or that I found in the last Blink-182 record. At their big old age, I shouldn't be having to hear songs like Teenage Teenagers. They don't border on being mind-numbing. They colonise that very concept of being mind-numbing. They were meant to do this big tour with Weezer and Fall Out Boy, if I'm remembering right. Obviously, every concert and festival in 2020 has pretty much been either cancelled or postponed indefinitely. So the choice has been taken out of my hands, but I'm kind of glad that was the case. This new Twin Atlantic album, it's arrogant, it's self-aggrandising, it's just like the embodiment of a band that want to do their big epic record and they're just falling flat on their face. It just feels years late to this whole trend of the 2010s where bands would pivot over to making like synth heavy pop rock that wasn't really pop. I'm thinking like Bring Me the Horizon, who, opinions aside, no matter what you think of them, like at least there was like an intention there. They were just wanting to do that. They weren't kind of going in and thinking they were doing something far more than that. No, Power has a message. Power has meaning. It has got this like bubbling sensation, this pressure building up inside of it. Wants the instrumentals to be really bold to match it. But every turn, whenever it comes to the payoff of this build up, it is just like a burp followed up by a little bit of sick in your mouth. Skiff it. Right, so we're going to do a little Childish Gambino quality line graph, something like that. So we'll start here with Community, quite high up. Going to conveniently skip over because we're going to skip 2 because of the minute, conveniently over Camp. Then we're going to go to Atlanta, the high point of his career, and Now We Come Love, which is also pretty good. Go to the Migos SNL sketch up here, and then we're going to come to 15th of March 2020, which goes a little something like this. So when it comes to Drain Gang releases, Exeter isn't quite on the same level as something like E or Trash Island. It's just Blade's the weakest thing about his own releases. I think that's a pretty common opinion amongst those that aren't kind of like on the hype train at this point, because when it got to a song like Wonderland and Echo 2K shows up, I'm just thinking to myself, where's the versatility, where's the emotion that Echo shown that just Bladee isn't? It would just make such an improvement. Much like any Bladee release, the instrumentals are the best thing about it. They're a lot more ethereal than anything that I remember of Red Light. There's also a lot less painful, kind of, I hate to use the word, but cringy lyrics. There's not many shortcomings in that area. It's also not too long either. The runtime's definitely working in its favour, so it never like overstays its welcome too much. But yeah, I just, at this point in time, it's just always going to be the case that Bladee is like the weakest component of Bladee, and I do hold out hope that one day I'll get a Bladee release that has me reaching for the peroxide. But at this point, this ain't it. I was probably the only reviewing outlet other than NME that was excited for a Bombay Bicycle Club album in 2020, and I'm not saying that as a slate. I still think that albums like A Different Kind of Fix and So Long See You Tomorrow are just as meaningful and well made as they were upon their release. I think the biggest thing going against this album, it's just that not much has changed in those 6 years since So Long See You Tomorrow. That was like a huge shake up that introduced genres like kind of dance pop and psychedelia to their sound palette, and it's just a bit more the same. There's nothing egregious, there's no egregious acts committed on this album, which is definitely a good thing, I guess, kind of like the bar being set there. But yeah, there wasn't anything too exciting for me, though I will say Eat Sleep Wake was just a really delicious, delightful wee tune that I can totally imagine soundtracking like an E4 teen drama. So yeah, I'm still happy the Bombay Bicycle Club are back. I'm just hoping that next time around with a new album that they kind of shake up things a bit more. Last year's collab between Kenny Beats and Rico Nasty wasn't perfect by any means, but at the very least it allowed Rico Nasty's appeal to really shine through. Unlocked isn't quite that. I think it's not for a lack of trying, but I just think that the best thing about it is probably Kenny Beats himself. I think that the instrumentals see him kind of like explore new pastures, as it were, whereas Denzel Curry, who is the person you hear for the entirety of the record, is just not that interesting. He's just continuing on this downward trajectory, just going absolutely similarly mad. He's trying to be all up in your face, but it's just a case of just his bark's bigger than his bite. I was really quite let down by this. This is a bit upsetting because I've been a staunch advocate of Enter Shikari for the longest time. Even when it came to the Spark, which I thought was quite a dip in quality, I still wasn't turning against him. But this new one, it doesn't really put much confidence in me. It's not bad by any means. I'd probably say it's on level pegging with the Spark, but I just feel like they've kind of become caricatures themselves, especially when it comes to the lyrics, which is the thing that I come to them for. They're like a big political band, but I just feel the kind of the ground that they covered here has already been very well covered, and any new terrain, correct me if I'm wrong, but it just felt like nothing interesting or new was being added. The Minesweep and A Flash Full of Colour, this isn't. Sonically it feels a lot better. It's trying to be like a spoonful of each Shikari saga, and I think really when it's trying to be a lot more poppy, like Crossing the Rubicon or Satellites, the former sounds like kind of pure like 1975 style stuff. I think they do pretty well with that. Like it's really weird to have this timeline where that's what they do best, considering the kind of like the mad stuff they were doing earlier on in their career. But I'm not against what they're doing there, but I still think that even though they're trying to be very varied, when they're trying to be like really hard, the dynamics just aren't working for them. I just don't think there's quite the crunch there. It's just like soggy Weetabix, which, I mean, soggy Weetabix isn't that bad, but when you're wanting something crunchy, I'm done with this food analogy. Elon Musk promised to deliver much needed ventilators and fell short of everyone's expectations. So let's go on something kind of unrelated. The new Grimes album. This might be the biggest letdown since that 2017 Arcade Fire album. Is that how long it's been since that one? Nothing quite as bad on here as it was on Everything Now. It had stuff like Peter Pan and Chemistry, which was just nauseating. But everything on here or not everything, but a lot of songs on here just feel like pale, feeble imitations of what Grimes has already done. That's not to say that there isn't anything of any merit on here. I do like 4am and Violence. It has like the kind of quirkiness and infectious hooks that bring me back to Archangel's time and time again. Delete Forever isn't half bad either. Kind of the childish diary scribblings aside, I just think this album's a bit of a shallow slog, and it's not helped by the fact that the opener and closer just it just makes it feel so bloated. So yeah, better luck with that new album that's meant to be coming out. Time for another disappointing follow-up to a great 2010s record. It's been 6 years since Trouble in Paradise, and that doesn't necessarily mean that La Roux's been working on this record for 6 years. I know that because this doesn't sound like much time was put into it at all, which sounds pretty harsh, but I just feel that this album sounds so flat and underdeveloped, which it's just lacking those super catchy hooks or those just really tantalising like vocals that I come to La Roux for. Nothing on here is particularly abhorrent or painful, but nothing's all that great either. I just think that there's no real depth or focus to it. There's moments where I'm hearing exactly what I want to hear from a La Roux album, but they just don't make up like a smidge of this record. They'd make up like a really tiny portion of it, which just really breaks my heart. Really breaks my heart. I wanted to like this a lot more than I actually do, but man, just instrumentally, it's too stagnant. Like sometimes the grooves come through, they latch on to me, and I'm totally seeing what to get hyped up about, but it's not very often that happens. And then the vocals as well, I think the singer here is just super stationary. I'm not getting much from it. So when you've got really stagnant instrumentals and really stationary vocals, you just end up with something that's just not very interesting to listen to. So it makes Disco Valder a really hard album for me to recommend, if I'm being perfectly honest. So I'm not going to sit here and lie that I don't get the appeal of Thundercat. I've been on TikTok, I've heard them changes a gazillion times, and it slaps. He's also quite the character. I think that he's pretty funny, and when he's pushing comedy on this album, I think that's when it's at its strongest, and when I feel like I could actually find myself liking a Thundercat project all the way through. But I'm not quite there yet. It's not quite clicking with me. I think that Thundercat definitely has the talent to be able to pull off an album, but he's got the ingredients, but he doesn't know what to do with them, is what it feels like. I think sometimes that happens where it kind of comes through with something like the Louis Cole collab. I feel that was just like the right amount of quirkiness for me to really work with. His delivery, I don't like his delivery. It just did not match with with what he's surrounded by. He's not playing to his strengths at all. So hopefully whatever he does next does see him play with his strengths a lot more. Shout out to my son Josh for putting me onto this one. I think Brakence is an act that really does wear their influence on their sleeve. Those influences being Dominic Fike and Jova. But man, they really do work well with these influences. They make it work. The production has this like amateur like quality to it. It gives it this kind of like underdog charm. You end up with songs like kind of FWB, where they're just going through all these different moods. And kind of exploring different kind of genres too, and I just don't think the emotional intent is like impacted negatively by it. If anything, it just gives it so much more of a punch to it. It does start to become a little bit overdone as it progresses, but I think this is just a really interesting foundation for Brakence. I'm definitely going to be keeping an eyeball or two on them. If you're looking for a really cool blend of emo rap, R&B, kind of just so much. There's so much going on here. But I would emo rap, R&B, pop. I would say give this a shot. Here we have the final CRYWANK album. I've always had a soft spot for James's heartfelt, but also kind of melodramatic lyrics, as well as what they and Dan managed to kind of do instrumentally. They always shake it up a fair bit with each new project. They are a quintessential music Tumblr act, and I mean that absolutely in a positive manner. That remains to be true with Fist. I'm not going to say a title out loud, which begins with like a cynical romantic saga that spans over like 8 songs, and it pulls from genres like Midwest emo and does so super successfully, if I might add. If I had to pick a favourite from the 27 on offer, it would probably be Deep Down I'm Really Mark Smith, which is kind of like a in hindsight manifesto of what CRYWANK have kind of represented, what kind of impact they've had, maybe if they've kind of, I think there's kind of like a self-awareness about how certain acts have like romanticised mental illness. Not that I think CRYWANK have, but I think there's that kind of trying to think out with what your music is. Like, it's not just a way for you to vent, like, it has an impact. And I just love how each like strum of the guitar seems to like fill the room more and more, with James just trying to like keep afloat and just spill all these feelings out. It's a really effective way to close out the album and to kind of close out CRYWANK's career. On the latter half, I did feel like there were these kind of more comedic or eccentric tracks that almost kind of felt like you were joining a group of pals and you weren't quite privy to the inside joke. Sometimes there was like an Adult Swim kind of surrealness to it that I was digging, but there was also points where I was just kind of like politely chuckling along, hoping that they would move on to their next trick. This new record might not be their best work, but I still think it manages to encapsulate the DIY oddness that made CRYWANK such a cult favourite for so many. And yeah, I wish Dan and James all the best for whatever musical creative pursuits they go on after this. I was taken aback by how much I really did like this new Dua Lipa album. Don't Start Now just has that same freshness that hit the radio whenever New Rules started to like become more prominent, and I don't think it's an album that's holstered up by one really strong song. Break My Heart has just been on a constant loop in my head. That bass was just delicious, and then Love Again, it has this sample that I was looking for to see if I could find its origin and find where it's been used, because it was just bringing up all these like, almost like I had like this long lost feeling for it, but I can't find it. So I don't know, Dua Lipa's just got this like magic spell that she's used on me, because it definitely gave me nostalgia. Considering what category it's in, I wasn't drilling over absolutely everything that it offered. I do think that there's the D-tier Lily Allen tune that is good and in bed, and then you get Boys Will Be Boys, which good intent, but just not good execution. It does really like end the album on a bit of a dampener. All in all though, it's good to have an album that's really commercially successful, that's also a total treat as well. So yeah, I would still recommend this if you kind of just brushed it off as being just a chart friendly album. I found Jack Stauber's shtick to wear a little bit thin on the 99 track 65-minute long Micropop from last year, but I think his decision to make his projects a bit smaller and more focused is definitely playing off a lot better for me. With this one, I don't think the hypnagogic aesthetic is more interesting. I don't think he's added anything that makes it more interesting, but I think having it soundtrack a journey around a supermarket gives it like kind of that Bill Wirtz energy, which if you're in the know, you know is good. So a slight improvement for me. I Disagree is by far the best thing that Poppy's put out. Working under the alt metal banner means they can find out what works and what doesn't work in a more interesting fashion than say when they were using dream pop on some of the earlier Poppy releases that just didn't do much for me. It's a welcome change. It makes things feel a lot more concentrated. When it gets to songs like Fill the Crown, it really does remind me of something like Code Orange in terms of how harsh it is, and I mean that in a very complimentary way. When Poppy decides to bring any swell instrumentation or acoustic guitars, it's always to add to the tapestry rather than just being stark contrast for gimmick's sake. Not to say that the album doesn't end up being a little bit gimmicky and a little bit predictable. That's my biggest complaint about it, but there's a lot of bright spots on this project, and it does have me excited to see what Poppy ends up doing next. Maybe I will get to the point where I'm praising it to the extent that others were praising I Disagree. So this was easily one of my most anticipated records of the year. Just it's following up the Bot Fest that was 2017's Arena, so of course I was going to be excited, and I do think it was a pretty cool move to have this album's lyrics focus on family and lineage, and to have it matched up with how Rena's like exploring like her history, what music's inspired or entertained her, like nu metal, get into like Britney Spears like era pop. It just matches super well, so I think that was a really good creative decision in the end. Shut the Fuck Up initially felt a little bit clunky at first, especially the chorus, but now it works just so well. You get excess that is just a really good blend of social awareness and that kind of aforementioned early noughties like boppiness. And I think the other one that I want to bring up is Comme des Garçons, which initially I just thought was alright, but oh man, it's really just like been hooked into me at this point. It reminded me a bit of Big Fish Fear, if that kind of like that big dance beat, which is always a positive in my books. The latter half though, it's a little bit lacking if I'm being perfectly honest. You get Chosen Family, which is a good message, but I heard through the grapevine that Not Real Music Ryan had described it as being like a RuPaul Drag Race like song, which is I don't think I can say much better than that. But for me, it was like I had like ingested like 5 brain liquors. It was too much for me. And then you had like the Fuck This World interlude. I don't think the album would be missing too much if it was just to disappear. It's just kind of there. So yeah, it's a good album, I would say. It's just one that's pretty weighed down. So I'm a bit disappointed, but also I'm still equally as excited to see what Raveena ends up serving next. I can't believe it's only been 2 years since the last Warfoot project. 2018 it feels like it was ages ago, but also it feels like it was like just yesterday. But I digress. Legit is another eccentric collection of garage and drum and bass tunes. I do think it's been toned down ever so much. There's not like kind of like weird samples or air horns going on here. I do kind of miss that, but also I think that it allows for better paced, more detailed tracks like the opener and bangers. I think there's probably a middle ground there where you could have that same just over the topness but also keeping that detail there. I'm excited to see if that's something Jamie can end up doing in the future with his solo work, but you know what, I'm going to be sporadically returning to this throughout the year. It's an EP I like, and yeah, if whatever I've said is kind of got you tantalised, go give it a go. The fact that the opening track, Understanding, sees young Nudie saying how he's sick of being patient is it's interesting. I guess that's the word I'd use for it, because this is an album that requires patience, mainly because it just goes on a bit longer than it really needs to. When Nudie is at the top of his game though, I think time just becomes a bit irrelevant. His flow isn't anything to write home about, not that it's bad, but it's just not that substantial. It's his enunciation more than anything that just gets me like really hooked on songs like No Go. It really helps to emphasise the hypnotic nature of a project like Anyways, and I also think that the beats are pretty strong too. That definitely helps things. Do It With The is a pretty good closer, partly because of how there's a bit more of a harsher bass going on and it's paired with some really lush keys. It's a good pairing up there, and yeah, I think Anyways is a pretty solid, satisfying trap project all in all. Felt a bit mixed on Nicholas Jar's first project under the Against All Logic name. I just think his attempts at house music weren't all that, but second time's definitely a charm. The collection of songs on this new album feel as if the house party on 2012-2017 were moved to like some abandoned warehouse. It just feels so much more mechanical, colder and just menacing. Whether it be fantasy that feels like you've opened a time rift in order to listen to Beyonce in your third generation iPod, or if you can't do it good, do it hard. I just feel like this is just so, it confronts you, it's hypnotising, extremely abnormal as well. Significant improvement in my eyes. La Vita Nuova translated means the new life, which I'm just that good at translating Italian, by the way, just knew that off the top of my head. And I do think that means a lot of freshness for Chris's music, is evident by this EP. I just don't remember synths being so heavily used in her music prior to this EP, especially if a track like I Disappear in Your Arms, which is just pure dance pop. I'm definitely a fan of this direction, and that's not to say that I didn't enjoy her 2018 album greatly, because I did, but oh my god, like, people have been sad. I think that may be the best song she's ever put out. It's it's a moody epic that it like cryptically but very like passionately tells about this really intense connection. It's just very beautifully painted. The same goes for Mountains. Just I could listen to an hour loop of that and not get bored. I think it comes down to how Chris steers her delivery. I think it's just pure SMR to me, like all the little mouth clicks and whatnot, just super engrossing. I don't think A Disappear in Your Arms works super well in its extra track form, just not as natural or significant, but that aside, every track on this EP is just like hit after hit after hit. It's got me super excited about a new Chris project. Uncut Gems, a movie with so many deadlines, times and dates stated that it would give my Google Calendar an absolute panic attack. It's undoubtedly one of the best movies that I've ever seen, in no small part due to one of Trix Point Never's Daniel Lopatin soundtrack, which is just integral to the sheer dread that it invokes. School play feels like a roller coaster that is like ascending to the heights of Kilimanjaro. You hear like little gears like creaking as you keep going higher and higher, and at a certain point you're just like pleading and begging to just kind of like plummet to wherever this ends up going. I do think that Mohegan Suite is, I think I'm saying that right anyway, is one of the tracks that kind of reminds me a lot of Matt Quayle's Mr. Robot soundtrack as well, but it's like expert use of major and minor chords, creating this mood of, again, this kind of like sheer dread, but also this like weird beauty that you can almost feel that same attraction or that same compulsion that seems to drive Howard Ratner for the entirety of the movie. Much like the movie itself, relief is only known after it comes to an end. It's that burn sensation that you get in your chest after running for a few miles. But once the jelly legs have healed, you'll be just tying your laces and getting ready to run right back into this nightmare. If there's a release in this video that you're not already familiar with, but you really should be, it'll be this Fax Gang EP. I can only describe it as a long lost transmission that has travelled through space and time from a planet that just parties 24/7, though it is bit crushed to oblivion. So maybe it's more comparable to like those codexes you get in games like Mass Effect that have just been trampled on by squad after squad. Despite that, so much personality manages to shine through. It's just a super sweet, sugary listen. It's one of the most unique things I've heard all of this year, and if that doesn't get you on board, just know there's a line on Soaked where they say, give you whiplash, feel like J.K. Simmons. That should give you enough to take that leap. Being one of those wise lads that sung the Ooze's praise back in 2017, I was on board for another jazzy Archie Marshall affair, and 3 years later, that's what we've got. Right off the bat, it's definitely a bit more focused. For better and worse, I did like the whole kind of sky's the limit, floaty nature of the Ooze. It kind of constantly kept me on my toes. I don't really think that's kind of evident on Man Alive, but don't take that as a slate. Don't think that doesn't mean that it isn't captivating or engaging, because Man Alive still has all that King Crow magic. King Crow's misanthropic tidings never camouflage into its surroundings. I think a better way to put it would to be that it allows the kind of post-punk art rock compositions to kind of bleed through the jagged edges of his words. They're equally rough and hazy on Stoned Again, and trodden and foreboding on something like Comet Face. Man Alive might not be my favourite King Crow record, but I think that kind of purely comes down to the really high bar that he set for himself, because Man Alive really does show that it was really fair of us to bring up King Crow in every conversation in the early 2010s when it came to indie music, and even more so now when it just comes to music in general. What Laura Marlin has dropped since I Speak Because I Can has been solid, but I don't think anything has been nearly as profoundly satisfying as Song for Our Daughter. Each song feels like a good soundtrack, a different chapter of a coming of age film. You have Held Down with its just stunning refrains, and then you have Strange Girl that just screams Joni Mitchell. Blow by Blow was definitely the one that moved me the most. You've got that beautiful piano, those swelling strings, and Laura's gorgeous vocals. It's almost enough to distract you from the kind of like harrowing nature of this song's story. Lastly, there's a standout closer, For You, with some like Kid Cudi humming going on, but it's an unapologetic love letter, just full of little morsels of advice. It's just a perfect way to end an album like this. I think there's many layers of it that I'm yet to unfurl at this point, but from what I've discovered at this point, I'm super happy. Circles is genuinely touching, a character study type album that explores similar themes that Swimming did when it comes to self-improvement, struggle and perseverance, and as much as I did like Swimming, I do think Circles is just a bit tighter, and from a singing and production standpoint, just a lot more fine-tuned than its 2018 companion. Can't talk about this album without bringing up Good News, one of the best songs of the year. It's just so beautiful, so many of the lyrics with a new context just bring me to tears, and it just brings me a lot of sadness knowing that Mac will never know just how much this song resonated with fans. There may be things I wish were done a little bit better. I think the track listing could have just been a bit more better arranged. I think Woods would be a better closer, but I would just be nitpicking at that point. I think this is just the perfect finale that Matt could have wished for, considering what had happened. I think a lot of posthumous releases can be very offensive and distasteful, but not Circles. Miss you, Mac. I know it might be counterproductive to try and sell you on this EP by saying it doesn't do anything really that remarkable, but Moonstone is just such a stunning EP. If I was to draw a comparison, maybe I would compare it to something like Caliuchis would make, in terms of just how like moody and appetising it sounds, just with ease. It's a really irresistible listen, and Raveena doesn't take any time at all to really show how much of a beautiful combination of dream pop and R&B she's capable of making with Headaches. Just at 3 minutes in, I think it's 3 minutes in, she just lets it like completely burst with this energy, lets it evolve in reverb, and it just has my jaw on the floor every time. On Rating Music I made up the tag of a glass of wine on a Barcelona balcony, because yeah, it's just like transports me to this really warm, safe space because of how just stunning it sounds. Hopefully that line of thinking makes sense. I'm really enthusiastic. It's just simple but lovely, and I would totally implore you to give this a go, especially if you get some like really good Weller and you have your beverage of choice on you. Props to my boy Josh Storstein for recommending this to me, because you're a true pal. This is the over the top, cavity creating, future bass pop it's going to lead to my early demise, I think. Cheeto covers so much ground that it's really hard for me to be like, oh, if you like this genre or that genre, then give it a go. It just, yeah, like I say, covers so much ground. Riol is a kind of artist that just kind of chucks everything at the wall and sees what sticks. But I think a better comparison would probably be that she's chucking magnets at a TV. They're rarely missing, and when they do click on, they're just creating this just pandemonium. The opener might fool you for a few seconds, but before long it's just transforming into its beefy, bassy, pure form, like it's some sort of just electro pop dubstep Gundam. I don't speak Japanese, but I know that chorus, Howl included, is just magnificent. So if you're looking for something exciting that will pump you up and just keep you on your toes, then I don't think you can do much better this year than this Riol project. You know, I got a parcel in just there, and it happened to be the very project that we're gonna talk about. Shye, Obscura. I don't often talk about these kind of albums because it's really hard to like pinpoint or word the sheer beauty that just like effortlessly floats around your headphones. But I did like Shye's last project, and for a very similar reason why I like Obscura, and it's just the sheer effortlessness that she manages to kind of activate these nodes of nostalgia in my brain. For whatever reason, maybe it's like the late night traffic or the hiss of electricity, but Firefly reminds me of like winter time when I was younger, and just like in the dead of night wanting to like explore the house, try and find my Christmas presents that my mum had hidden away from me. 112 Moon sounds like the kind of song that I'd imagine that game company would compose. Those glitchy synths and the percussion sound like mysterious creatures in their own right. I think Shye is just once again hit out with one of the more substantial ambient releases of the past year or so. So yep, I'm a fan. When I first heard the opening minute of The Adults Are Talking, I was just transported back to 2009 when I heard You Only Live Once on MTV Rocks for the first time, or 2011 when I heard Angles for the first time, totally legally. I know that might make it sound like I'm saying, oh, that sounds like the thing I like, therefore I like it. That's not the case, even if it was, still valid justification. But I think, being an Angles defender, I still think it's like the first time in over a decade where the Strokes sound genuinely enthusiastic about making new music, and they're doing it pretty well, if I may add. Julian Casablancas' vocals are just the best they've ever been. They've aged like fine wine, especially in the opener. I think the falsetto that he uses it brings me to tears, man. It's just gorgeous. Sonically, it usually kind of concerns itself with steel wool and polished renditions of Is This It post-punk, but there is experimentation on here, At the Door being probably the most successful venture that the band take, even if it does remind me of Creeper. Oh man. I'm not sure back to business as usual, but if in 2 years we hear that there's a new Strokes album on the way, after this record, I'm going to be as excited as I would have been about hearing that news back in high school. I don't think there'll be an opening to a song this year that has my knees shaking or my eyes welling up as much as Fire by Waxahachie has. It is like the embodiment of why this album is worth giving a shot, even if others may have put you off from giving it a go. Instrumentally, I think it's super sturdy. It's just fine slices of Americana and indie folk, but when you take it as a whole package, it's heavy, it is quite harsh, but ultimately it's something that I didn't know I needed to hear, but I'm so glad I did here. How it tackles independence and struggles with addiction, specifically alcohol, it just regularly put a lump in my throat. Let's go back to Fire for a second. I could kind of go on about this song forever, but I love the imagery that's used in the opening sentences. It's not as if we cry a river, call it rain. It gets me mad because I've never heard it put so beautifully. The whole sentiment of how your pain is so valid, but it's also temporary. It is just put just so poetically. St. Cloud is just home to a lot of hard truths, but also reassurance. I know this must have been an incredibly important album and personal one for Waxahachie to put out, but I'm so glad that she did, because it's ultimately been one I find a lot of companionship and camaraderie in. So thank you. Yeah, everyone says Melee is so good, but Ultimate does everything that it does and better. I'm not really getting that. We're talking about an album, not a game. It might be weird for me to praise an album for its infectiousness at a time like this, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Dogleg's debut record feels like a time traveller had planted these songs in my head years ago, because upon my first listen it was almost as if I'd already affiliated live events and gigs and people and just all these memories with them. That immediate sense of nostalgia and familiarity is super scarce, and usually because it kind of usually end up with the result of just sounding like the same old, but not the case here. I can't quite break down the emo formula that Dogleg are using here, but I think it has something to do with just how they word their hopelessness and the stark contrast to just the sheer persevering of what they're doing instrumentally. I'm thinking of a song like Bueno, where the singer starts her sentence and stops mid-sentence and starts again, and it's all kind of like painting this, or not painting this picture, but like make this point about being unable to say how you really feel. I think just there's a weird charm to it, and that happens quite regularly. So yeah, a super charming album that makes me long for a gig season whenever that ends up returning. I can't go back. So it's a pretty layered album, and when it comes to event records, I try and give them as much time, but I do want to say something about this album because I think something I really admired about it, start off with that, was whenever Fiona starts to show off primal strength or like these connections to nature. I think some of the big examples would be like on Chimica, where it says Hurricane Gloria in Excelsis Deo, or when it comes to the opener where she does what can only be described as like a dolphin chill. It's just I often say that's a strong album in relation to a record's quality, but I think Fetch the Bolt Cutters is like just literally like strong by its very definition. I think we get a lot of songs these days that are about be strong, this is my fight song and whatnot, but I think the way in which Fiona goes about wording herself just goes to show why her penmanship is so adored by so many. I won't be able to cover it all, but I'd be amiss if I didn't bring up Relay. I love how that guitar has just been like, it sounds like it's been like continuously tuned, and there's all these rhythms going on. It feels like at any point the song's just gonna like snap and just break loose. It gives it just a really great sense of tension. It pairs up super well with the chorus of evil as a relay sport, where the one who is burnt turns to pass the torch. From my interpretation anyway, that's totally just about how victims are often filled with this resentment and this anger, and I don't think people quite understand that, and also could also tie into just this loop of where bullies end up, or people that are bullied end up becoming the bullies and all that. So many kind of like different interpretations you can take from it, but I think the mood is just like super well executed here. There's For Her as well, which if you've listened to this album, you don't need me to explain. It is a super chilling track, but one element that I really do appreciate about it is how earlier on the album Fiona talks about the media and kind of like people that just kind of really kind of just made her feel like shit, and kind of now ties in to this song about abuse and kind of like pointing the finger and making them accountable, which I think is super relevant considering what's happened in the time span between the Idler Wheel and Fetch the Bolt Cutters. The artwork for Fetch the Bolt Cutters might seem a bit weird or odd at first glance, but I think after you've listened to it a few times, you begin to see what Fiona was hoping to get from it. Maybe I'm reaching here, but I just think that the fact that Fiona is like boxed in, but also just in your face, like she's confronting you, she will not be ignored. I think that just ties in super well to how she's evolved in this artist who I think now will be known for her ferocity and strength. just as much as she'll be known for just being someone capable of describing feelings that you've never been quite able to pinpoint. And look at that, I managed to bring up this album without bringing up the controversy surrounding it, in which case I was completely right, by the way. My take was correct. I'm not going to elaborate on that further. And yeah, if I was to award any project from 2020 so far the coveted label of being Liam core, it would definitely be this one from the heart. I think it's just, I don't really know where to start here. Burning Tires, I'll start with that song. I think it just sounds like 100 gecs, and Brockhampton were stuck in self-isolation and decided to just make this super overblown bubblegum bass track, is how I would put it. But also it pulled at my heartstrings as well. I guess another kind of relevant example would be kind of the same way that Dorian Electra's Flamboyant did last year too. Midwest emo as well. This is giving me kind of prime goth boy click and Drain Gang vibes, as if they're all getting like pushed out of like a Game Boy Advance speaker. I also really like the line on it. I'm a kawaii ass bitch, I love music, which is just the kind of ludicrousness that you know I've fallen over. If you were someone that put 100 gecs on or near your album list for 2019, but you wish there was more R&B or emo rap sprinkled on, then this is a release for you. It is just 80 minutes of pure and utter joy. It's rather evident that Haru Nemuri is joining the leagues of people like Seiko Mori and Ryo for making eccentric, over-the-top J-pop punk music. I think a good place to start would be There's Nothing More Reliable Than Love. I think I'm translating that right, or better yet, I hope Google is translating that correctly. The lavish disintegration guitar fretting going on, the impassioned delivery, the key change, the motherfucking key change. It's like Haru's trying to kind of contain this energy of like a fizzy drink. She's trying to contain this energy in a fizzy drink bottle, but she's just like slipped in a mental or two when we're not looking, and the results are just crazy. The same can be said about Lovetheism as a whole. I don't think it ever becomes one note or shallow, though I think Haru kind of really does utilise these quiet moments as much as she does the rough ones. Pink Unicorn is a good example of that. It's a bit more of a quiet passage that gets drop kicked by some MIDI brass and that impassioned delivery. Becoming the Sea, again, I hope I'm translating that right. It's not a quiet song, but it's much more like a grungy affair. Like the dirt is just like turned up all the way to 11. As far as I'm concerned, this release right here is one of the most underappreciated of the whole year, and you should just give it your time of day if you're looking for something that's just going to like knock your fucking socks off. At first I was hesitant that a drum and bass album was going to be capable of holding my attention for the whole runtime, but I was definitely proven wrong here. I'm not a huge expert on this genre, not as much as I am, say, on like N64 7 tracks, but I do think that the mood and atmosphere that this record manages to instill makes it wholly unique. I say feel because sure there are some comparisons to be made to somebody like Burial, in terms of just like the thick, like moody atmosphere that fills your lungs, but I think Sewerslvt's soundscapes just managed to like hit you in a way that there's just something just indescribable about it that makes it just so wonderful. This probably comes from the subject matter that the album doesn't tackle so much, so leave the door open for. It lets the samples and compositions that it utilises to kind of let them in, and by them I mean themes such as self-doubt, depression, invasive thoughts. A song like Sacrifice, I'm calling it that because it's actually like Sacrifice backwards, it uses a moral oral sample and it uses it pretty well, and it just totally makes you feel the pain and resentment that after being treated so poorly by so many that you just end up feeling. It's a pretty heavy listen if you have your ears tuned into it, but even if you're just listening to it purely just for the music, if you're just listening to like background music, I think there's enough going on that you'll find yourself entertained. But I think there's a lot going on for it that you should kind of like be listening out for, unless I'm just reaching again, which could pretty much be the case. But yeah, one of the more unique albums of 2020 so far. So for this year, I've not listened to an album that's hit me on such a personal level in the same way Brave Faces Everyone has. There's comparisons to be made, of course. I think you've got Men Zingers and Hotelier to name but a few. The former because of the cadence used, and then the latter because of just the sheer emotional potency. But the end result is just wholly unique. Before the album came out, the band did put out a list of organisations that correspond with each song, so that kind of goes to give you some insight as to how heavy some of these songs can actually be. You have Self-Destruction, which captures like the drowning sensation of chasing your dreams with a financial anchor tied to your leg. Then you also have something like Generation Loss, which I think is a pretty contemporary, powerful song about the constant loop of using and abusing drugs and alcohol in order to deal with your current circumstances, those circumstances of which are never really tackled by the people that can actually deal with them. The imagery used here is often pretty agonising as well, either because it's relatable or because it's super realistic. I just think the album's ability to analyse is just so fresh, and the way it does it as well. And yeah, to really just kind of reveal what it really is, it is like a emo record that analyses and criticises late stage capitalism. So if you like this record, you're a commie. The title track, while no less miserable, it definitely ends things on a bit more of an optimistic note, showing that yeah, things feel a bit hopeless just now, but things are going to get better. Yeah, just a stunning album, though it's pretty heart-wrenching. I think for some people this will be the Weeknd album that brings them onto the hype train, and I know that sounds really ludicrous at first because it's a Weeknd, he's always been huge, but it just always feels like out with the mixtapes, no one ever goes on about his albums too much, even though I think Starboy is pretty good. When I say they don't go about the albums, I mean they don't go about them as being these great records, or just kind of home to those really hefty singles. But with After Hours, man, it's blown everything out of the water at this point. There are the in-your-face bops like Blinding Lights, just so powerful and tantalising, just really incredible. It's kind of like that moment on a night out where you just feel like you're invincible and anything could happen. The night is young after all. But then you get something such as Heartless, which is just that sobering reality that hits you after a few hours. And it's really kind of like given an extra oomph thanks to some just really great Metro Boomin production. In Your Eyes, man, the synths on here, they feel like they'd be like the perfect companion to like a vaporwave animation. And I want to bring up the title track as well. It's one of the more ambitious cuts. It goes on a fair wee bit, but the payoff is great. It's not like a huge bombastic conclusion to it. It's a bit more on the subtler end, I would say, but it's no less kind of just satisfying. After Hours just sits for me so well because it's a near hour-long album that, minor hiccups aside, it's just constantly entertaining. I think it's just to kind of to have this insight of infectious hooks and just kind of late night introspection. It only comes about from having that kind of gonzo style partying. Kevin Lozano put it best when he said this new Yves Tumor record sounds like it's from a time when rock music was forbidden. And yeah, I totally agree, because just like the skittish arrangements and the sinister lyrics, I feel like it's like one deciphering away from just going, fuck it, I'm dropping my romantic attire and here I am, this big Cronenberg-esque monster. Clocking in at 36 minutes, having to a tortured mind. It has a small time frame, but it manages to do so much in that short time frame. Do you remember if you went bowling when you were younger? I don't know if they still have these like leaflets up or these like wee posters, but it'd be like if you go buy those pins, or if you go down the actual alley, and you're gonna end up in this like dark universe, you're gonna go through this like little portal. Always scared the shit out of me. And I think the transition from romanticist to dream palette is like the musical embodiment of that. Respect also has to be given to The Closer, A Greater Love, which just wears its Prince influence on its sleeve, and I think Yves just rocks super well. Yeah, I'm fair chuffed with this new album. I feel like it's not as ambitious as Safe in the Hands of Love, but it's no less unsettling and euphoric as a result. So yeah, another great one from Yves Tumor. So there we have it, 40 albums covered in however many minutes it took me to do, so I think this is probably on the longer end, but it's just how it's ended up. And if there's anything that you think I've missed, then yeah, feel free to go to the link in the description about what albums you want to cover in the next roundup, or just leave them in the comments if you want. I'm not your dad. Check out the Spotify playlist in the description as well, and if you're feeling up to it and you haven't already, then just subscribe to the channel and leave a like. I totally appreciate it. I'll be back in a few weeks to do another ranking video, this time about another 2017 record that I'll do track by track. I don't know, I don't know if maybe people will be able to guess it, but yeah, I'll catch you then. But as always, stay safe and stay hydrated.